The Causton Lions' upcoming rugby season could be derailed when their owner is frozen to death. Barnaby and Winter have to get out of the scrum if they want to solve this one. We're talking a surprisingly moving episode.
The history of rugby.
And the pains of getting old in this episode of...
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me as always is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric. We are talking The Lions of Causton, the fourth episode of the 20th series. It originally aired on the streaming app Acorn on May 3rd, 2018, and then in the UK on May 26, 2019. It was directed by Matt Carter and written by Nicholas Hicks Beach. Let's hit the pitch.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. You'll still be here when you get back.
What can I get for you?
I've had an idea you might like. Have you ever thought about gay porn?
The Causton Lions are training for their upcoming rugby season. Star player Danny Wickham scores a goal and insults his teammate Jake Cobham, which starts a shoving match that coach Bill Viner breaks up. Viner was a former rugby star who played with current Lions owner Mark Adler, who is not a huge fan of Danny's BS. Meanwhile, octogenarian Belinda Braun rolls into chock full of chocolate, bespoke chocolate shop and bakery owned by Mark's wife Samantha. She stops in to see her grandson Dominic, who says he will be working late on a new recipe. That night, Samantha and Mark have dinner, which ends abruptly when she receives a text, and Mark, suspicious of who she is messaging, storms out. The next day, physical therapist Debbie Gallagher gets to work at the team's rehab center and finds Mark frozen to death in the cryogenic chamber. Barnaby and Winter show up to investigate. Fleur tells him that Adler appears to have fallen asleep and frozen to death. He died around 8:05 because the machine logged in the time, and then once the temperature dropped, he would only survived for about a minute or so. But Fleur will know more once she can defrost him for an autopsy. But first, she needs to find a microwave big enough to do it. Debbie tells them that... Because he's a human, and they don't make microwaves that... Anyways, so Debbie tells them...
I got the joke.
Yeah. Debbie tells them that the team uses cryogenics because it helps with recovery time, but she had told Mark to never use the chamber alone. Mark had been having memory loss and mood swings, but refused to be treated for dementia, so team doctor and Debbie's dad, Neville Gallagher, was using the cryogenic chamber with him as the chamber might help with brain disorders. He also says Mark believed his wife was having an affair. Brian tells the detectives that Mark upset people when he bought the team and turned it from a local operation to a more professional team. He brought in his friend Brian as coach. Brian had to retire after someone injured him badly in a scrum, but he doesn't know who actually did the injuring. He thinks it was possible because he came out as a gay man that he had angered some of his former teammates. Meanwhile, former Lions coach Guy Bevan sits in the local pub with his neck brace on, showing server Tracy Horton his idea to start a new Causton Lions, one that's purely for local players, and that apparently would violate all kinds of copyright laws. He is trying to crowdfund it, but he is also hoping that he will get a settlement in a lawsuit to help him pay for it. Then Dominic comes in and starts talking to her about gay porn. Anyways, Guy also made a weird meme showing Mark being murdered, so the detectives interview him. Guy, who lives with Debbie, says the meme was just a joke about his anger towards Mark about taking his beloved team and making them, successful and professional. All that stuff you see the people in Wrexham complaining about on that TV show. He says his neck injury was caused by Mark's goons during a protest, so he is suing Mark for all he's worth. So why kill him? Sam says she was not having an affair, but after 8 years of marriage, Mark had changed in the last few months. He stopped being supportive of her store, he accused her of cheating, and at a team dinner, Mark began babbling apparent nonsense on stage about how he had hurt nobody. She tried to help him, but Mark didn't seem to want any help. Fleur says that Mark had a bunch of benzodiazepines in the system, which would have made him half asleep when he was put into the freezer. She also says that his brain scans showed he was suffering from CTE, which he would have sustained during his rugby career and would explain his behavioral shift. Someone is harassing Danny, as his answering machine is full of weird messages, and someone is secretly taking photos of him. There are also rumors that Mark was going to transfer Danny over his partying ways, and there was a claim that Danny had assaulted Tracy at the dinner where Mark gave his weird speech. Tracy says he grabbed her and tried to fondle her, but when she threatened to prosecute and sue, Mark told her that she would never win and hurt his team. Danny says that all that mattered to Mark was that he wins, which, yeah, probably. But Jake, tired of Danny's crap, tells Winter to look into what happened with Danny's last club. Someone is leaving mysterious envelopes at the home of Guy and Samantha, causing Guy to shut down his Facebook team page and Samantha to break down into tears. Danny also got an envelope and complains to Neville that someone is out to get him. That night, someone breaks into the Lions' ground and sets fire to a goalpost. Mark apparently changed his will days before his death, leaving the team to Bill, not Samantha. They go to talk to her at her shop, where Dominic tells the detectives that his nan originally owned the shop, but Sam had come in as an investor and eventually took over. Sam says her shop is doing quite well, and she really didn't want the Lions anyways. Bill has no idea why Mark did it. He felt that he owed Mark a huge debt, as he had been floundering after his injury and drinking too much. When Mark offered him his job, he got sober and repaired his life. Speaking of addiction, turns out Danny was almost kicked out of his old club due to an addiction to painkillers. He apparently had kicked the habit, but when Winter goes to talk to him, he finds a bottle open on his car seat. He says he's back onto them because of all the pressure to deliver, but he knows his limits, man. It is revealed that Neville is the one giving him the pills. Tourist info. In a rarity, we are spending a long time in Causton, home of the Barnabys and the Criminal Investigation Department headquarters. It is also the home of the Causton Playhouse, the Causton Lions Rugby Stadium, and a state-of-the-art physical therapy clinic that is only sort of flammable.
Standing in for the Causton Lions Rugby Stadium is the Henley Rugby Football Club in Henley-on-Thames. I assume they got a new goalpost out of it. The grounds are not far from the River Thames setting for the episode Dead in the Water and A Sacred Trust, both of which we covered earlier. Henley-on-Thames will be seen in several other episodes that we will cover, including last year's Model, The Black Book, Down Among the Dead Men, and The Magician's Nephew.
So our first strange kill in the episode is the human lolly. Mark Adler is drugged and frozen to death in a cryogenic chamber. He is in a spread eagle pose, which I guess is for being dragged, but also was really weird. I mean, does he fall asleep like that? You know, no wonder Sam and him are having problems. I mean, he's hogging like a good chunk of the bed.
Maybe it's just because it's close to Easter as we are recording this, but there are a couple of religious imageries there that with him being spread eagled and then the Saint Sebastian arrows piercing him, that the meme that the guy made.
Yeah, Mark was a real martyr.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that going into the murder, we had that scene where the lights in the clinic start going out one by one, which is a very sinister and creepy way. Reminded me actually of a scene of a horror film that's, I don't think I think is genuinely very creepy, but also not very good, called Session 9.
Oh, really? I don't know if I know that.
It's about guys, it's about asbestos cleaners, like taking apart this old insane asylum. There is this underground tunnel area in it, and they have all these lights set up. And at one point, someone's chasing a guy, and the lights just start going out one by one by one. It was very creepy.
Yeah. It also reminded me of the scene in Severance where they do that, which is, of course, much more recent than this episode. But yeah, it's always a weird feeling when you're going, because it does it in the grocery aisle with the, when you're going down the freezer aisles and the lights go on and off, and it's kind of weird.
So I had a question about actually when they're in there with the body, with Fleur and Barnaby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's so cold in the chamber that he still has ice on his face, and that Cheese has to wear a hat, why can't we see their breath?
I assume that in deference to the fact that they did not want to actually freeze their actors, they didn't actually have it that cold in there.
Probably. But it was just, I was like looking at well, if it's so, why is it so cold and yet I can't see their breath? Because I've seen episodes where it is legitimately cold and they're outside in the regular suits and you can see their breath.
Yeah.
So all this episode hinges on the Causton Lions, a rugby team that was in a low league, but is now close to being in the top league, thanks to the efforts of Mark Adler, who is rich. I don't really explain how he went from being a rugby player to being wealthy enough to afford a team. If you think, because if you think about sort of Welcome to Wrexham, which is that they talk about the amount of money that's involved.
Yeah.
To take a team to that level. There's like Mark is not that rich.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and one of those things I learned while watching Ted Lasso is that these teams can move from level to level, unlike in the U.S. with baseball, where the teams are, you're either major league, you're AAA, AA, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't move. The players can move.
Right.
And, those are, considered farm teams where they're grooming players to possibly move up, from the minor leagues to the majors, if you can do that. Obviously with football, the farm team is college, but
that does happen a little bit with these other, like a really good player they might like have down in like a lower team to sort of get some seasoning, but as they get better quickly, they will get signed and whatnot. We live in a world now that is like where you've seen sort of this mechanics of running a team with shows like Welcome to Wrexham, which I thought was again great, really behind the scenes look at the nuts and bolts and what it takes to take a team that is like lower down and really get them to a higher level.
Yeah.
Which is, that show came out after this episode. So these are things that they never really had to think about.
But it's something that their core audience of, in the UK would know about.
Yeah. Although it does make, like, if Danny is this top caliber player, right, that he's getting, like, clearly major press in, like, the Mirror.
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't he would be already at a top team. Like, they would have he wouldn't be in this team. They would have already paid him a lot of money unless he was hugely problematic with drugs.
Yeah.
Which he is.
I would imagine that a lot of these athletes are probably pretty much on painkillers all the time. I mean, they're punishing their bodies relentlessly.
Which is a plot point.
Yeah, he is kind of, to bring back Ted Lasso, kind of the Jamie Tart of the team. Yes.
I don't know what professional rugby players look like. We do get a scene where they're all coming out of the cryogenic chamber in their towels. And, as a soft and doughy dude myself, I had to say, like, they looked a little soft and doughy. Like, I'm not, no offense. I really don't legitimately know if this is what, you assume, like, again, with football, like proper, like football, Americans, I'm talking about soccer. Those guys are running for like 45 minutes straight. They are fit. They are cut. Now,
yeah.
I know rugby is different and it's a bit more football playery, but none of them seemed super beefy, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there is more beefiness in rugby from what I have seen. I think they're leaner in rugby sevens, but I think from what I have seen, and I haven't watched a lot of rugby, to be honest. It's just not on my radar I don't watch a whole lot of sports anyway, but there seem to be positions where they are beefier. More, not quite the size of like an American football player, but but bigger.
Which is where they bring in 3 Kiwis and 2 Samoans, which sounds like a drink order, but that's actually players from New Zealand and Samoa, which gives us the wonderful haka sequences.
Yeah,
which I kind of love. So hakas, for people who don't know this, are ceremonial Maori dances. They are usually done to welcome visitors or challenge, or as seen as sort of a dance or a chant to show off their strength and their pride. A lot of sports teams, especially in the rugby, especially with like the All Blacks and all that stuff, they all have a very famous haka. Did you see them more with like sports teams? I actually, when I went to New Zealand in 2006, I went to, there's a town in one of the islands called Rotorua, which has a traditional Maori village for tourists. They had 3 busloads of people who go to the village. And each bus had to pick a leader who would represent their bus for entry into the village. And I was selected I was the only one putting my hand up. to be the team leader or the representative from our bus. So I had a haka done at me.
Oh, okay.
Which was, and they were very like, the important thing is like, don't be like, you're not supposed to like flinch or anything like that. You're just supposed to like show kind of nothing. As like, you're like, you allow them to sort of try to intimidate you, but show nothing. It was really a cool experience, to sort of be on the receiving end, to see it from that angle. I love a good haka. Love it.
If you want to see a really great haka that is not sports related, Google Haka New Zealand Parliament, because they recently did one just a few months ago to protest rolling back Maori rights.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to watch. It is started by one young woman, and then everyone from her party joins in, and it's just an amazing, both Maori and non-Maori. It is an amazing thing to watch. It is a protest that is just fantastic.
I loved and he's not credited in this episode. And look, if you are the guy with the handlebar mustache on the team doing the haka and you are the one like often doing the tongue, please let us know. I thought you were fantastic. I was so bummed to not see there's no credit for this person on the IMDb or anything like that. So I don't know who this actor was. I'm assuming, he's traditional Samoan or Maori. I loved you. You were great.
Yeah, a lot of football players who trained in rugby have become American football players as well. So there is that crossover again from from Samoa.
So, were you happy with all the man butt, Eileen?
There's some good man butt in this.
There's a lot of man butt in this.
There's some nice Winter in a towel.
Winter again showing off his V-line. So we do see them in this cryogenic chamber at this state-of-the-art medical clinic, which again, where's all this money coming from? Because that's like millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's a very high-end chamber. And
I wasn't sure. They don't make it clear, because we do see the Nan getting to use the hyperbaric chamber. I wasn't sure. Is this a private clinic that the team also gets access to that Neville owns? Or is this the team's thing? And then in which case, why the hell is Nan in there in the first place?
That was a little confusing why she was able to get in there. But, maybe they, as part of their community outreach, will let members of the community use it for various things.
I looked up the cryogenic chamber like an ice pack, only better. I was curious. Apparently there are some studies looking at the effectiveness of cryogenics on brain disorders that seem promising, but there has been nothing conclusively proven. They did their research. I'm pretty sure there's probably an escape hatch on the other side, though. And there's a lot focused on Brian and his days as a rugby player in his own right. That fantastic video where Don Gillette is having to wear that wig.
Yeah.
And then we have his memories of his injury, the day he's getting injured, are often shown as this dark and shadowy and very claustrophobic with a lot of heaving breathing. Did it remind you of the Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards?
It did, yeah, and I can see that because you do get that very sweaty male body claustrophobic feel to it.
Yeah. I mean, that battle was that sequence where Jon Snow is kind of almost crushed to death in the scrum of the battle, had that very, dark, claustrophobic sort of feeling. And that was done 2 years prior to this episode. So it would not surprise me if that was in their thought process as they were shooting that.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that marriage of Mark and Sam?
Well, it's, your standard Midsomer marriage. In that it is not healthy.
Nope, that is imploded. A lot of it apparently from Mark is suffering from CTE, that is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It is a brain disease that comes from sustained and repeated head traumas. Over in the U.S., it was kind of diagnosed from football players. That a lot of football players were showing, when you hear of these like years ago when you would hearing these stories of football players who would like, shoot their wives or like
Mhm.
seem to go off the rails, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of suspicion that that was from the CTE.
Yeah.
And in fact, a recent survey, a third of former NFL players believe they are suffering from CTE.
I like that Fleur called it a riot with goalposts, which is kind of what,
Hmm.
you can say football is in many ways. American football
Yeah.
is in many ways, is that, and they are constantly battering, banging each other. I mean, the helmets don't seem to do anything other than make them hit harder.
The helmets are only moderately padded. I mean,
Hmm.
they like, again, you're being constantly knocked to the ground. If you think about it in a football in the span of a game, right? These guys are
Hmm.
crashing into each other every couple of minutes. The force of what they say, for example, that when you're running, right, that when your foot comes down on the ground, you're coming down with like the force of like, I think it's like double your body weight.
Mm.
So imagine that you're now kind of running and then crashing into someone who is also running into you at a heavy speed, and
Yeah.
that impact and that force is going to have a much bigger impact.
Yeah.
And it's football players, rugby players, professional wrestlers have also,
Yeah.
I believe, one of the most famous things that they think they've traced back to it is uh, the wrestler Chris Benoit,
Mm.
who basically was suffering from. It sounds like apparently they think he was suffering from CTE, and he ended up annihilating his own family.
Mm.
CTE has like more profound impact than just players, having memory loss or anything like that. It can create
Hmm.
such strange personality shifts that usually leads to violence.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, they think Muhammad Ali might have been suffering from
Hmm.
it, and because boxing is
Boxing,
another one.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is that what really makes him a suspicious jerk? Because it seems like he might have had some foundation there.
That is true.
So there is a shot early on in when the detectives are interviewing Samantha, and she has a box, a prescription box that falls out of her bag, and
Hmm.
it is for a thing called temazepam, and that is a benzodiazepine
Hmm.
that is used for sleeping disorders. Was that Mark's?
They never say, because when she later on decides to medicate herself, she uses
Yes.
something else, something a little more organic.
Let's say it, because that is the best alibi I've ever heard on this show. Is that she couldn't have killed somebody because she was passed out on the couch from eating weed brownies, which is great.
Marijuana, as Kathleen Turner pronounces it in "Romancing the Stone."
So I just wish that was a little clear, because they do say like that is a call out to like
Hmm.
benzos, and they do say that he had benzos in it, but it was, there's a couple of points in this episode, and we'll get to them as we go on, that were just clarity would have been a little better. It doesn't take a lot to make these
Hmm.
things clear, but it would really
Hmm.
help. Since obviously rugby is the centerpiece of this episode, Eileen, why don't you take us through the history of rugby in your history corner?
All right. It was either this or chocolate or freezing people.
Next time.
Guys have been throwing balls around for ages, starting at least in ancient Greece and Rome. From there, it spread through Europe, giving rise to many of the ball games we play today. Early forms of football or soccer developed on the streets of Europe and were often violent games that could become deadly. The English historian Bede mentions playing ball in his work The Reckoning of Time, written in 725 of the Common Era. Most of the early balls were inflated pig's bladders. Kicking was involved in the game by at least the 13th century when it was first mentioned in writing. In 1303, a student at Oxford University found his brother dead, allegedly while playing ball in the high street with Irish students. In 1314, King Edward II had the Lord Mayor of London ban football. As it was written in French, the term used was pelote à pied, but this is the first written use of the term football. So team games involving balls that are kicked or tossed are well established in England and Europe by the Middle Ages. Rugby, however, was developed at the Rugby School in Rugby, Warwickshire. The school was founded in 1567 as a grammar school for local boys, but it became a public school by the 18th century. In England, public schools are private schools that accept any boy from anywhere as long as the family could pay the fee. According to legend, the game was invented in 1823 by student William Webb Ellis during a game of football, when he picked up the ball and ran with it. The story is probably apocryphal, and he's probably not the first boy to cheat at football. Anyway, the rules of the game, that was called rugby football, were first codified in 1845, and it spread to other schools across the British Empire as former pupils continued to play it. The Rugby Football Union was founded in 1871. In 1863, the schism between rugby and association football, which is where the term soccer comes from, was formalized as the Football Association banned carrying the ball, holding other players in place, and kicking an opponent in the shins. Though I have seen that last one happen, especially when a bunch of 6-year-olds are all trying to kick the ball at the same time. The following year, in 1864, the first rugby clubs were formed. In 1895, a split happened between the northern version of the game and the southern, and 21 clubs left the Rugby Football Union and formed the Northern Rugby Football Union, which was named the Rugby Football League in 1922. Rugby League was the first to pay players for missing work, which was the main cause of the split, though players were required to have proper jobs. Rugby Union turned professional in 1995. James Peters was the first black man to play rugby union for England in the early 1900s. In 1906, he was withdrawn from the lineup against the South African Springboks when they objected to him being on the field. Peters did make the national team 2 more times before losing 3 fingers in a dock accident in 1910. In 1912, he was forced out of the rugby union by politics and joined the Rugby League. The England national team would not have another black rugby union player until 1988. So what's the difference between rugby union and rugby league? Initially, there was no difference on the field. Eventually, differences developed so that they became distinct sports. Rugby league is a faster, more spectator-friendly sport. While rugby football reduced the number of players from 20 to 15 per side in 1877, rugby league reduced the number from 15 to 13. Other changes were made to the rules and the size of the field, and some terminology. In North America, versions spun off into American football and Canadian football. A form of rugby union was developed in the 1880s in Melrose, Scotland. Known as Rugby Sevens, it features 7 players playing 7-minute halves instead of 15 players playing 40-minute halves. Rugby union was contested at the Olympic Games from 1900 to 1924, except in 1904 and 1912. With the rise in worldwide popularity of Rugby Sevens in the latter part of the 20th century, Rugby Sevens debuted at the Olympics in Rio in 2016, with Fiji taking the men's gold and Australia winning the women's gold. Great Britain won the silver in the men's 7. England won the first men's Rugby World Cup Sevens in 1993 and was the runner-up in 2013 and 2018. England also won the Rugby Union World Cup in 2003, with runner-up finishes in 1991, 2007, and 2019. Women, of course, have been playing rugby almost from the beginning, though any public games often incited riots from men who can't handle women doing things they disapprove of. In 1891, a tour of New Zealand by a women's rugby team was cancelled due to a public outcry. During World War I, charity games of women's teams were organized and protective headgear was introduced to the game. Women's games were sporadic after that until the 1960s, when women's teams began to form at universities. It soon spread worldwide as a popular sport for women. The United States won the inaugural Women's Rugby World Cup in 1991, with England winning in 1994 and 2014, with 6 further second-place finishes. New Zealand has dominated women's rugby union with 6 championships. While Australia and New Zealand have dominated the women's Rugby Sevens, the U.S. created some excitement here at home by winning the bronze medal at the Olympics in Paris.
You know what I just realized when you were when you mentioned helmets?
Mm-hmm.
Mark was wearing a helmet in the rugby videos that they
Mm-hmm.
you know, a clever hint to his head trauma.
Yeah.
They put a lot of subtle stuff in here.
Yeah.
You want to take us through cast highlights?
Sure. Nicholas Goh played the human lolly Mark Adler. He studied biochemistry at Oxford before becoming an actor. He's had roles in Mata Mata, Queens of Mystery, Mars, and True Detective Night Country. His most recent role was in Shetland. He also recently learned how to code JavaScript according to his LinkedIn. Richard Rankin was Grabby Gladys Danny Wickham. Hailing from Scotland and born Richard Harris, he originally planned to be in IT, but decided to become an actor after a run-in with a film producer. Once he joined the union, he had to change his name to Rankin to avoid confusion with the other Richard Harris. He was a regular on Outlander, 13, and Trust Me. He is currently playing the main character in the show Rebus, based on Ian Rankin's mystery novels. Julian Lewis-Jones was keeping it local Guy Bevan. Jones is a Welsh actor who has appeared in Wheel of Time, House of the Dragon, Invictus, and The Guest. He played the King of Atlantis in Justice League and in the infamous Snyder Cut of Justice League. He's also a big supporter of Welsh independence. Tamsin Outhwaite played Stoner Baker Samantha Adler. She got her big breakthrough in 1998 when she was cast as Mel Healy on EastEnders, who she played for 4 years. She went back to the soap for a 2-year stint in 2019 before her character was killed off. She also appeared in New Tricks, Hotel Babylon, The Tower, and The Wives. Shireen Martin was Firestarter Debbie Gallagher. She's an Irish actor and a RADA grad and has appeared on The Loch, Blood, and Dublin Murders. Dougie McMeekin was Hat Fanatic Dominic Braun. He's appeared in The Beast Must Die, Joy, Chernobyl, Catherine Called Birdie, and The Decameron.
He also, judging from his Instagram, he's a musical theater guy.
Oh, you kind of,
I can see it.
Yeah. Aaron Galpin was Not Quite Fast Enough Jake Cobham. Hailing from Manchester, he's appeared in The Spanish Princess, Cold Feet, Hollyoaks, and The Return. Carlos Peer was Vengeful Tracy Horton. She got her first screen role in the show Missing and has since appeared on The Feed, Holby City, and is currently appearing on Dogleash. Otena Hopa was uncredited as the Haka leader, otherwise known as Player 16. Otena is the Kiorahi, or leader of the Hatia Kupa Haka, which is a traditional Maori performance and cultural group. And I want to give big thanks to the Te Aka Maori Dictionary, which helped me with all those pronunciations.
He really performed the hell out of the haka in this episode. If you actually look Otena up, he does a lot of work with he does a lot of corporate work, but also government work. Mm-hmm. So with sort of promoting Maori culture, Maori traditions and values. It would not shock me if he was involved in that protest haka that you saw.
Marsha Warren was Grandma Crime Boss Belinda Braun. Oddly enough, we will see her next in Death in a Chocolate Box. She's a 2-time Olivier Award winner for Best Supporting Actress in 1984 for Stepping Out and in 2002 for Humble Boy. On screen, she was in No Place Like Home, Edge of Heaven, and The Crown. Michael Maloney was closeted Neville Gallagher, who we talked about way back when we did Masterclass. On screen, he did Branagh's Henry V, Mel Gibson's Hamlet, Lawrence Fishburne's Othello, Branagh's Hamlet, and Shakespeare, The Animated Tales. On screen lately, he's been in Dogleash and The Marlowe Sessions. He's also currently playing Hercule Poirot in a touring production of Murder on the Orient Express, which is really fantastic if you want to see it on stage.
Did you see a production of Murder on the Orient Express, which is my typo?
Yeah, he's really fantastic in this, and
yes.
I've seen him in so many things. He's always so good. And he does remind me a bit of Peter Davison, so I always have to say, oh, wait, that's not Peter Davison.
He provides a really heartbreaking ending to this. And I was very close to making him Village Star of this week, but for obvious reasons, we chose who we chose.
Yeah, it was a tough choice on this one because, and actually, I think the most well-known actor was Tamsin Outhwaite at the time that this was filmed, because she's in all the promotional stills for it,
and also the Rankin. He filmed this He filmed this episode in between seasons of Outlander, which was a very popular show.
He was quite prominent on that. Yeah. Now, we also had a number of uncredited actors to help flesh out the world, so a shout-out to Richard Price, Jamie Lee Beecher, Lee Byford, Ruth Horrocks, Mike Gray, Glenn Webster, and Joe Wheatley. And, of course, our mayor of Midsomer, Chris Wilson, played a police officer.
Our village star this week is Don Gillette, who played out and proud rugby coach Bill Viner. Now, Gillette's first on-screen appearance was actually on a dating show called Street Mate, where apparently he was not the participant, but his friend was, and so he was interviewed, I guess, to talk about his friend. But soon afterwards, he had his breakthrough as the lead in a cop show called 55 Degrees North. Then in 2008, he joined EastEnders playing a serial killer who was killed off in 2010, which apparently is not enough to keep him from popping up as that character for several stints over the years. So, like Jason, he just keeps coming back. He's also appeared in Shetland, The Beekeeper, and The Stranger. In 2024, he joined the cast of Death in Paradise as the new DI Mervyn Wilson, fish out of water detective in the Caribbean, who, again, seems to hate being in the Caribbean for some reason, and I will never understand the premise of that show. I would never it was like, I got to go be a detective in paradise? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, early in his career, he starred in a training video for the Sainsbury's grocery chain, which I could not find, but I would love to see that. And apparently he met his wife, the actress Tracy Whitwell, when they were on the set of 55 Degrees North together. So,
Yeah.
Love connection.
Love connection. I have really enjoyed this season of him. You know, he's just had one season so far in Death in Paradise as Mervyn Wilson. One of the things that has always been an issue of contention is the white detective coming in and kind of running things. And as much as I love like the actors Ben Miller and Chris Marshall, you know, there was that white savior trope that kind of was going on there. To have him come in as a black detective with connections to the island is an important step for them to have in this show at this point, because it, especially with Don Warrington, who plays Selwyn,
the commandant,
retiring. I think it's very important for them to have him as a black man in this show.
I kind of liked it because they, for at least his first few episodes, he really pointed out how absolutely crazy it is that they're bringing all their suspects together and then explaining who done it. He's like, you know, I can just arrest him, right? We don't need to, we're kind of done. I just need to arrest him and type up the report. And they're like, no, this is how we do things here. It's like, okay.
And then by the end, he's like, I'm really enjoying this. Get everybody together.
Yeah.
Get all the suspects together. Yeah.
Yes.
I've really enjoyed the season a lot.
No, he's a great addition. The show has always been a hodgepodge of people coming and going. Again, a lot of the actors don't stay around as that long as the main detective because they live in England. They have to spend such a huge period of time away from their families to live on the island to shoot this. And again, I'm like, just live there. Just live there.
Yeah.
Every time I watch the Christmas special, I'm like, I'd move there right now.
I'll be the detective.
I'll be the detective. I'll live there. It's another weird small island with a high crime rate. I'll live there. All right, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be back in a moment with the second half of The Lions of Causton. And we're back. Let's talk about the second half of The Lions of Causton.
It's time for you to leave.
Put that down, Neville.
Neville, please. You know I love you, don't you? Neville, how swift are your legs?
Neville tells them that he was not overly concerned with giving Danny pain meds because all these players are on pain meds. They are injured or in pain pretty much constantly because it's friggin' rugby. But he also wasn't really looking too hard if it was causing a problem because he is very, very committed to this team winning. Now, they traced the arsonist car back to Guy, but it turns out Debbie was the one who set the fire. She was upset after watching Guy fall apart over Mark's treatment, and she wanted to push back. Now, while there, Barnaby sees a Corsican flag keychain that she says came from a trip her father took there recently. Remembering that Bill also went to Corsica recently, he talks to Neville, who admits that he is in a secret relationship with Bill. Neville had been in the closet for decades, but 6 months ago fell for Bill, who helped him finally come out. But they have kept it a secret as to not hurt his daughter, who he has not revealed his sexuality to. Now, he does eventually tell her, and she tells him that she's happy, he's happy. Meanwhile, Dominic reports to his nan about Samantha's sadness over the photos and they have a good laugh. Looks like they are behind the pics and the Danny harassment as well, since Danny gets a big package of gay porn. This show really loves man butt. But this time, Danny manages to track the shipment back to the sender and leaves a message to someone saying he knows what is going on and how to make it stop. That night at the cake shop, Dom is knocked unconscious and is drowned by having melted chocolate poured all over his head. The next day, Samantha finds him and calls the cops. Fleur says he was hit by something very hard and there's a baking weight missing. They try to track down everyone's alibi, but Danny is missing from practice. Nan reports a break-in, not knowing about Dom's death. Someone went through all of his stuff in his room and they deleted photos from the night Mark was killed off Dom's camera. But there are still photos of Guy without his neck brace and Samantha cheating on her taxes, which is really hard to photograph. Nan admits the blackmail was her idea, blaming Samantha for a stroke she suffered. Dom worked in the shop to look for blackmail, and they would make her donate money to various charities. Dom was the one who wanted to expand the operation to other people like Danny and Guy. It was all about making them squirm, until someone fought back. Sam says she never thought it was Dom blackmailing her, and says she was home watching TV when he was murdered. She also says that if she paid her taxes, it would end up bankrupting her, and Mark refused to help her when she asked. Guy says he pretended he was injured to everyone, including Debbie, but was with her at the station at the time of the robbery and murder. At the pub, Tracy tells him she believes that Danny killed Dominic, tells him that she knew about Dom's blackmailing Danny. She even helped out with some of it, like the gay porn, because of his attack on her, but Danny apparently figured it out and came round to her place the previous night out of control, believing she was behind it all. She was legitimately worried he would hurt her, so she gave up Dominic. They go to talk to Danny, who shoves Barnaby and makes a run for it, but the champion rugby player finds himself tackled by a police detective in a full suit. He says he went to Dom and Nan's house, but since she was there, he waited. But Dom never came home, so when Nan stepped out, he broke in and looked for the photos. But they had already been deleted. They were not of him taking pills, though. It was photos of him and Samantha, because yes, they were having an affair. Sam says that she was actually passed out from weed brownies when Dom was killed, and that she loved Mark. Danny was just a distraction after Mark changed, but Danny kept thinking it was something more. When they find the bloody weight in the boot of her car, she throws Danny under the bus, saying he hated Mark because Mark did want to transfer him. Nan says Dom always said he kept backups under his hat, but Winter can't find it under all the hats in his room. Finally, he remembers the weird top hat on top of a cake in the shop and finds a memory stick hidden underneath it. He looks at the photos and makes a huge discovery. Meanwhile, Barnaby, suffering some injuries in this episode, goes to Neville for some physio, and while there, watches a rugby program that mentions Bill's old nickname was Mr. Nobody. Remembering that Mark said he hurt nobody, Barnaby starts to put it together, realizing that Neville is the killer just as Neville tries to strangle him. Barnaby breaks free and chases Neville, joined by Winter, who is pulled up, and Bill hops in as well. Neville runs into the hyperbaric chamber, which increases the amount of oxygen in a sealed room. He locks himself in and turns it on full blast, pulling out a lighter which would cause the oxygen to ignite and the whole room to go boom. We get the full reveal. Mark was the one who ended Bill's career, jealous that Bill had made the English squad and he didn't. That's why Mark left him the team, to make up for all the pain he caused. He had wanted to tell Bill to ease his conscience, but Neville was worried finding out his friend's betrayal would cause Bill to relapse and Neville would lose him. He suggested to Mark to use the cryogenic chamber and start giving him the drugs, but gave him too many because he wanted the murder to last longer so Mark would know why. However, Dominic accidentally photographed him when he was photographing Danny and Samantha. Danny showed Neville the photo, and Neville realized that if Dom figures out that the photo breaks his alibi, Neville would be in trouble. So Neville broke into the house before Danny and deleted the photos, then went to the store and killed him. With that, he tells the detectives and Bill to run. And while reciting the team's haka poem, he flicks the lighter and kills himself in a huge explosion. Now, we had a second strange kill in this episode, death by chocolate. Dominic is killed when he is knocked unconscious and is drowned in melted chocolate. Wouldn't he have been burnt?
You know, I watched that several times. There is a bubbling sound, which I'm sure the Foley people put in there, but the chocolate isn't bubbling because you don't really want chocolate to bubble. You don't want it to
Right.
you want to melt it, so it's hot enough, but to melt, but you don't want to
Well,
boil it. Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to boil it or burn it because then the killer's got to scrub the pan, and that's just a whole thing. But
Yeah.
even then, like chocolate that's hot enough to melt and flow like that
Mhm.
should have left some kind of at least burnt the skin as well.
Yeah. Kind of reddened it at least, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really matter when they pulled that chocolate face off him.
Yeah.
Dom, before he's knocked unconscious, he asks who is there.
Mhm.
So he hears a noise in the shop, and I would assume at this point there are PSAs in Midsomer about not using that.
Yeah, or saying, "Oh, it's you." Yeah.
Don't say these things. It'll get you killed. The more
Yeah.
you know.
I love that shot of the caution what Fleur sign as they pull back from the
Yep.
from the body getting
Drowned in chocolate.
drowned in chocolate
That's how I want to go.
and robed in chocolate.
Mm,
Actually, that probably would be the way I'd want to go.
yeah. Sounds good to me. Our killer was Neville. It was all for love. I'm not going to sing the Bryan Adams song. He wanted to protect Bill from Mark telling him the truth about Mark injuring Bill, ending his rugby career early. Now, did Mark injure Bill from homophobia, or of Bill being on the England team and he wasn't, so jealousy, or does it matter?
I think he probably did it from jealousy because of the Bill making the England team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge, huge honor. Yeah.
Yes. But I think homophobia is probably mixed in that as well.
Mm.
There's not that many, professional sports players are coming out, but there's still a big stigma.
Yeah.
I kind of like that Neville comes out to his daughter right as she pulls up for work or whatever. Let her sit down.
Yeah.
It's like not waiting
Yeah.
at all. Do you think that Neville was committed to the Lions or Bill and Bill's drive to make the Lions a champion?
He said he'd been, with the Lion, a fan of the Lions for 15 years or something.
Yeah.
So I think he was always a fan. I think that deepened, obviously, when he started falling in love with Bill.
Because it's a big justification when you know that you are overprescribing pain meds to an addict.
Yeah.
Which, Neville, I mean, Neville could probably play off that he didn't know, but realistically, that's I'm assuming that's going to impact your medical license in the UK. Would hear.
Yeah.
Did you know that was the Corsican flag?
I did not, and I thought it was a very distinct one, which I think is why they chose it. It's obviously an island where you can go where it's warm enough, and
yeah.
And I did look up why it's a head of a black man. It's a Moorish pirate who invaded the island and kidnapped a woman, and but they caught him and they cut off his head. So initially the blindfold was across the eyes instead of looking like just a scarf across his head. It's obviously a very politically charged flag for Corsica because of their history with France, with Italy, with all those islands in the Mediterranean have very conflicted histories.
So he goes into he is caught. He escapes into the hyperbaric chamber where he is going to commit suicide, and he tells the detectives that he has disabled the hyperbaric chamber's controls. And my question is, how? You are not tech support. This is not the Starship Enterprise. It's a door. It's just I'm pretty sure they could just off.
Yeah, I'm sure there are safeguards where you can't actually lock it so that nobody can get in from the outside. That would be a huge safety feature.
Yeah. And then I loved the kind of story of Neville and Bill, so it really broke my heart to find. I was thinking, I had kind of forgotten who the killer was. I was thinking that it was going to be Debbie, that she had actually known that there was but when we find out it's Neville, when Neville starts reciting the haka to Bill, how swift are your legs? Oh, that is a really emotionally impactful scene that you don't really get on Midsomer too often.
No, I love the way that they threaded that through from the very beginning through the whole episode, and you see how important it was to Neville. I mean, he says it, early on, he says it, it always, it hits him, and, emotionally. And that relationship is so well done. We get that these men are passionate about each other. They have a very passionate kiss, which you don't see still in a lot of shows that deal with male homosexual relationships.
They don't do a lot of kissing on this show in general, right?
Yeah.
You don't see kisses between most couples.
Yeah.
Right? It really was impactful to see them being really happy together. And by the way, another it's our second Midsomer episode, especially within the Dungeon years, that is hinged on a secret gay relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I was kind of annoyed, and I think this is a big detraction for this episode, is that after the explosion, we see how it's impacted Winter and Barnaby. We do not see how this has impacted Bill. Just watching the man of his love admit to killing 2 people for him and then blowing himself up.
Yeah.
Just because it lacks that scene, because it's hit such an emotional thing, and then we don't seem to care how this affects this character that they've actually invested a huge amount of time for us to like.
Yeah.
It drops at a letter grade for me.
Because I think that relationship is so central. I mean, obviously to the mystery and to the murders, but also to the whole, when you find out about it and as it's revealed through the whole episode, it grows, and you're seeing that, and especially the history of homosexuality and how it is depicted through the series that would have been very important to show Bill reacting to the death of the man he loved.
It would have given Gillette one more really big scene as well.
Yeah.
They always want to end it on the detectives, and I get that, but in this case, I think they could have made an exception. Because I don't really care that this is Winter's the first one. This is the first time I lost a suspect. I'm like, okay, get used to it.
Yeah,
it happens. It's more important that this guy has lost a great love.
Yeah.
In a horrible way.
Yeah.
I also would worry that this would send Bill back into an addiction spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if he was worried about what the revelation from Just Mark would do, what would this do to him? Yeah.
Addiction is a huge theme of this episode. We also see it in Danny, who has a issue with pills and probably booze with the amount of partying he does.
Yeah.
Danny is a sports celebrity, and he says he can pretty much get away with anything as long as he delivers, which, checks out. That seems to be pretty true.
Yeah.
It reminded me, this is another everyone likes Danny situation.
Mm-hmm.
Not even but everyone allows Danny.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone permits Danny to do what he wants to do.
Yeah. But he can't have Samantha.
Mm-mm.
Which, it was an interesting... We don't really see him mooning over her, though, that much, do we? We don't see him, stressed out about anything.
No. No, I think Samantha was, a conquest, and he'll have another one.
Yeah. In his fancy yellow car.
Mm-hmm.
This episode needed a Jones moment of what a car!
Jones and his love of cars. Yeah.
Yep. So when he's listening to the voice messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
I recognized Dominic's voice right away on those.
Yeah.
Which I thought was you'd think he would at this point, since everyone knows everybody in these freaking towns.
Yeah, though you don't see him interacting with Dominic, so maybe he didn't,
Maybe. This kind of goes over to Dominic and Nan, where they start blackmailing Samantha for revenge, and then Dom seems to get addicted to crime.
Yeah.
And wants this to go wider, and I don't understand why the Nan agreed. Are we looking at some Rainbirds type vibes, or what?
I think that Dominic comes by his blackmailing legitimately through the genes, or at least from the way he was raised.
But I mean, the thing is, Samantha, I get why they would have a problem with Samantha. Danny, I get why Dom, who seems to be friends with Tracy, would have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
What did Guy do to them? like Guy's a victim of like Mark. Guy's a victim of Mark, and as you know, they should be almost empathetic towards Guy, but the Guy is the one where they're just kind of like, there's no justification for this.
Yeah. Other than we can, do this.
But the thing is, if Guy goes through with wins his lawsuit, he takes money away from Mark. It hurts Samantha.
Mm-hmm.
It would benefit them in their quest for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
It was just weird. I didn't quite understand. Other than they just like the sense of power, and they just liked making people squirm.
People get addicted to power.
Yeah,
obviously.
I'm not really sure there was any way they could take photos that would be clear enough to show that she's fudging her taxes.
Well, I know he probably, he might have like looked at the papers, the tax records, while he was in the office working one of those nights or whatever, if she didn't like secure them well enough.
But that's not the photos we see. The photos we see are through like using a telephoto lens through a distance. Come on, there's no way you could read those numbers.
Yeah, no.
Oh, she's doing her taxes. Like, yeah, good. She's a citizen. Bravo.
Yeah.
Also, why did he use those heavy gloves on the camera? It wasn't Winter.
No, that was obviously to hide, any sign of whether the person taking the picture was male or female.
Right, but you didn't actually even need to see. You didn't even need to see the hands at all, or see them hitting a button. If you just see the lens and you start hearing click, 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 it just seemed, heavy-handed for heavy gloves.
Yeah.
I think for me, and I know for you, probably the biggest confusion point in this episode is they never make it really clear how Neville knew that Dom was the blackmailer.
Yeah.
Because they kind of imply that Danny has been using Neville as a confidant, that he, to get him to do the pain pills, that he might have showed him some pictures.
Well, obviously, and they don't make this clear as to how he would have seen that photo.
Yeah.
And that's...
Also, why wouldn't have Danny just said, it's like, hey, there's you in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so that all is a little confusing and not quite spelled out how Neville, did Danny show him the photos, and that's how we saw him. And then, was Danny calling after he gets the gay porn stuff and he learns who sent it to him. And then he learns from Tracy that Dominic was involved. Does he call?
Although we
Neville?
see him making that call as he's leaving his home. So he hasn't talked to Tracy yet.
Yeah.
So it's like he's leaving this message, I know who did it, da-da-da.
Yeah.
And so he goes, confronts Tracy. And then I'm assuming that this is how I'm assuming. I'm assuming after he's confronted Tracy and found out that it's Dominic, he's called Neville back and goes, oh my God, you are not going to believe it.
Yeah.
It was this guy, the whole, but it's unclear. It is just a thing of like Neville, just the way it is done, Neville just knows.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of it's a little bit of it's something was missing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They cut a line or something.
Yeah. It's the reveal because it has such an emotional impact. It's terrific, but it also lacks those details.
Yeah. One detail they kind of got right. So Belinda is a stroke survivor, and Neville is treating her using the hyperbaric chamber. If you're not quite familiar with a hyperbaric chamber, it is a medical device that allows patients to breathe pure oxygen in a pressurized environment. They are literally pumping in pure oxygen, which is flammable, and that's why when he lights the lighter, the room go boom. Now, there are some studies that show that hyperbaric chamber may be good for treating stroke victims, but again, much like the brain disorders and the cryogenics, there's nothing conclusive. So is this a medical lab? I don't know. I just know how this place worked. Also, how many label makers do you think Dominic and Nan go through? Talk about an inefficient way to label those things. It's just like, okay, got to put the D. I got to turn it back to the A. And, oh, thank God, another N. I don't have to turn anything. Y, space, click.
I loved those things when I was a kid. But yeah, you love them when you're a kid.
Although I guess nowadays they have them, they're like little keypads that you type in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're much more sophisticated than they used to be.
Yeah. Just checking in on Guy and Debbie. So Guy was claimed to be very angry at Mark because his team was now becoming more successful,
Mm-hmm.
which seems antithetical to any sports fan that I've ever heard.
It's more of a rock fan, my team. I was a fan before they sold out. Yeah.
I just assume he's just bitter, right? He's just bitter because he got fired.
Yeah.
His Facebook page for the new local again, also calling your team the Causton Lions would be like me opening up a park and calling it Disneyland. His page had 73 likes, which honestly, for that area, has got to be amazing. Got to be one of the most popular Causton pages. How did he make that meme? You go on murdermeme.com and just type it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now it would all be done AI, you know, because we've seen those really scary memes. Ooh.
And then I loved the shot. I love the whole sequence of Debbie burning the goalpost out of revenge, because it was really eerie with the haka in the audio, right?
Yeah. That was a very well done sequence. Yeah.
There was a lot of really well done sequences in this episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you get any of the jokes about the magic sponge?
I assumed it was all sports guy thing.
Yeah. I had to look it up because I had never heard it before. So it's basically a joke about like a panacea for treating sports injuries. Apparently, like in the old times of 100 years of football, like if you got banged up on the pitch, they would pull you off and they just sponge you down. And like, oh yeah, the magic sponge is going to cure all your problems.
Yeah.
So that was the joke on that. It is a joke that pretty much probably only works in England or Australia, New Zealand. Fair. They may get it too. I don't know. I didn't. Corner. We got more of our beloved Fleur.
Yep, this is still her first season.
Still bumping heads with Barnaby a bit more, right? A lot more. There's still more contention to that relationship.
Yeah.
Which is, it's hysterical that she can be that contentious in that fur hat.
The fur hat. I had to make sure you had that down to talk about, because that was a fur hat.
Has she worn that since? Because if not,
I don't think she has. Yeah.
They need to bring that back. That needs to be a character.
Yeah.
Thing.
That should have been a running gag.
Yep. She had some great lines. Died because he got turned into a human lolly.
Mm-hmm.
That she does need to defrost him. It wasn't really a line so much as like kind of just funny.
And the right with goalposts, yeah.
Yeah. Fleur is still single-handedly the best addition to the show ever. So, detective work, a large portion of this episode centers around Barnaby getting injured after a racquetball game that he makes Winter play with him.
Yes. And
they start that because Winter has basically called him old.
And we had just had Jones calling him old a couple episodes ago, so yeah.
Yep. And Barnaby does win the game, which again just makes him like bring his underling in and then beat him in a game of sport that he probably didn't want to play in the first place.
Yeah.
With his wicked serve. That was a good serve.
Oh yeah, that was a good serve.
And then he injures himself reaching for a towel.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I totally feel you.
Yeah, oh yeah. So the whole Coe versus Ovett thing is Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett were two British runners in the 80s, two long distance. They had a rivalry where they, switched who won which race. It kind of came to a head in the 1980 Olympics, which was notably the U.S. did not attend, but Great Britain did field a team. And they each won a gold there, with the other one coming in, I think, silver and bronze, depending. And I did watch those races again. Yeah, so it was just a long-time rivalry.
Okay.
It's kind of shorthand, especially Sebastian Coe came up.
There's a lot of sports shorthand in this that I'm not a sports guy. I mean, I'm doing a podcast about a British murder show. I'm not a sports guy. But thank you for explaining that. And I'm glad I could explain the magic sponge to you. Danny shoves Barnaby and they let him go.
Yeah, that would get you, you know,
It's
assaulting a
assaulting.
police officer.
Yeah.
A police officer in this kind. Yeah, come on, Danny, you'd be in El Salvador by now.
And I mean, and then Winter, this guy's a star, right? He really must be hopped up on pain meds because, again, Winter caught him while wearing a suit.
Flash.
Yeah. I mean, and Winter, like, didn't have a head start. So,
No.
yeah, I just, that struck me as odd. I was like, they would have arrested him, I think.
Yeah.
And put him in the box.
Yeah.
They also talk about the case in public out loud, loud enough that actually people that are suspects in the crime can hear them. That seemed a bit much.
Yeah.
How painful was it for you to watching Winter try to struggle with the hat clue?
I guess he hadn't seen the cake as many times as we had, maybe.
I mean, they just stuck it right in her face, but I was just like,
Yeah.
Like, as soon as, like, it's under the hat, it's like, he kept it under his hat. Oh, yeah, the hat and the cake.
Yeah.
And just, like, waiting. We're just waiting for Winter to, like, slip. Like, is it under this hat? No. Is it behind this picture of a hat? No.
Yeah.
I'm out of guesses.
Yeah. We're kind of, as the audience, we are subjected to the cake with a hat many, many times.
No, I get it. Like, it is just like, hurry up. We've got places to be. And then meanwhile, Barnaby almost gets choked.
Yeah.
That was a really well done, well shot sequence of just, like, edited and put together of just like we see him putting it together. We see Neville getting suspected. We see the hands starting to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Really well done. As was the big explosion.
Yeah, I did try to find the building that they used for the clinic or lab or whatever it was. And I don't have IMDb Pro because I have this podcast hasn't paid enough for me to, subscribe to
Wait,
that
you get
yet.
paid? Who's paying you?
Absolutely no one. And the more recent years, I don't have access to the filming location, so I could not find out.
I'm assuming that was all like CGI and practical, but
Yeah.
they're not going to. This show can do an explosion, it just can't blow up a whole building.
Yeah.
But no, that was a great, great stunt sequence. Well done. Over in the home life,
Yeah.
Barnaby is. There's not a ton in the home life, but mostly it's about Barnaby being really insecure around those doughy rugby players.
Yep.
And asking Sarah, do you think I've let myself go? And do you remember her response? Appallingly so. Because she knows it's getting to him.
Yeah.
She loves to tease her man.
She loves to tease her man, but she loves her daughter. Her interaction with Betty and the actress who plays Betty is there. It's always such a lovely interaction.
And Betty got a line.
Yeah.
She said, "Thank you, Mommy."
Yeah.
So, they didn't credit her, but I think they actually did credit her for this episode. They don't credit her when she has no lines.
Yeah.
Poor kid. But did you again catch the very, very subtle clue early on in this episode? As she is playing in the first time we see her, there is a small children's book that is called Mr. Nobody.
Ah.
I looked at it just because I love those books, the Mr. Happy, Mr. Nobody, all those things. And I was like, oh, it's one of those. Which one is it? Oh, Mr. Nobody. I have no idea. Well, okay. I wrote it down, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah.
It was a very clever, basically hint. So how did she know what this was all about?
Betty is psychic.
Yep. She's our psychic Midsomer detective.
Yep.
Final thoughts.
I really like this episode. I think it's got a lot of heart. Like I said, I wish there had been that final scene with Bill showing the impact of it, because he was such an important part of this. It was all because of him. I mean, he didn't cause it, but it would have been nice to have seen the impact of it on him, because that was important.
Well, it's a solid It's a murder mystery where the solution actually has like a real emotional kind of impact and gut punch,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Especially when the guy is going to blow himself. I mean, there's an emotional weight to their story
Mm-hmm.
that this show doesn't always get to, right?
Yeah.
Like, and when they do it, and when they do, it's usually tragic.
Yeah.
So, like, seeing them happy and then having that, like, we get to see them happy. We get to see him coming out. His daughters accepted him.
Yeah.
All of that's ripped away.
Yeah.
Brilliantly acted, wonderfully done, but we are left with we don't get to see the impact of this on Bill. We don't get to see the impact of this on Debbie.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, more than Bill, more than anything. I feel like,
Yeah.
it would be nice to know how, as we've seen this, like how this guy handles adversity in the past, how he has had it struggled.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice just to see like what is the impact of this, right?
Yeah.
And we don't, and that for me hurts. Really does like hurt an otherwise top-notch episode. Like there was some really confusing bits, and I had some quibbles, but there's always plot holes. It's really about solid mystery, well acted, emotional core, solid Barnaby and Winter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really solid episode that they kind of fumble it. They kind of fumble it before they nail the touchdown.
It would have been an A episode, except for that. Yeah.
I agree, and I have to give it a B just because it's just I when at the end I was like, you can't end it that way.
Yeah.
So they didn't even end it with like a corny like ha ha ha. It's like we're supposed to feel sad for Winter, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was like
No.
Or then they make another lame joke about the magic sponge, and again it was like, some guy did just watch his lover explode, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this in other episodes where, they don't do the freeze frame at the end with the laugh of, Jessica, Fletcher, and sometimes they have gone and done those emotional endings.
Yeah.
And it's paid off. And this is one of those where it would have paid off to have that emotional ending.
Yes. I didn't need that magic sponge joke. I didn't need to see I didn't care that Winter's lost his first suspect. I cared what happened to Bill.
Yeah. Because you were so invested in Bill by the end of this show.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's everything we wanted to talk about. Now, if you had anything...
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for agreeing me. Well, thank you for agreeing. Finally, you agree. Now, if you had anything you want to discuss about the Lions of Causton or Midsomer Murders, feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. If you want us to use the email in the show, just say so in the email itself. We are also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook and Instagram and Threads. Eileen is dying over there for some reason.
I didn't have much sleep last night, okay?
We are also Welcome to Midsomer on YouTube, where we've been uploading our old episodes. Please follow us in all these places. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing to us or rating and review us on iTunes, please. That really helps people find us. Turn on your automatic downloads. That is a huge help with us and the algorithms. Also tell all your friends about us. Now, we're going to be back next month, so we hope you will join us again. And as we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer, sending gay porn as a prank can be murder.
Not cool.
And a little homophobic. Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exception for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.
He studied biochemistry at Oxford before. That's an easy word to say. He studied biochemistry at Oxford because...
Apparently not.
Hits him, Whoops. Speaking of hitting.
Wow. It really hit him.
Yeah, you can cut that part out.